Hello friends, and welcome to tonight's edition of Sleep Stories. Tonight I shall be reading for you 2 short stories of love, longing, and passion by Lucy Maud Montgomery. If you enjoy these readings, I would encourage you to subscribe and click the like button. It will help the channel immensely. I thank you for your support. And now it is time to unwind. Find a place where you can relax. Get comfortable. Close your eyes and take a deep breath. The day has come to an end. All that is left for you now is to listen to these stories and get ready for sleep. And so we begin. The Story of Uncle Dick. I had 2 schools offered me that summer, one at Rocky Valley and one at Bayside. At first I inclined to Rocky Valley. It possessed a railway station and was nearer to centers of business and educational activity. But eventually I chose Bayside, thinking that its country quietude would be a good thing for a student who was making school teaching the stepping stone to a college course. I had reason to be glad of my choice, for in Bayside I met Uncle Dick. Ever since, it has seemed to me that not to have known Uncle Dick would have been to miss a great sweetness and inspiration from my life. He was one of those rare souls whose friendship is at once a pleasure and a benediction, showering light from their own crystal clearness into all the dark corners in the souls of others until, for the time being at least, they reflect in his own simplicity and purity. Uncle Dick could no more help bringing the light into the lives of his associates than could the sunshine or the west wind or any other of the best boons of nature. I had been in Bayside 3 weeks before I met him, although his farm adjoined the one where I boarded, and I passed a little distance from his house every day in my shortcut across the fields to school. I even passed his garden unsuspectingly for a week, never dreaming that behind that rank of leafy, rustling poplars lay a veritable God's acre of loveliness and fragrance. But one day, as I went by, a whiff of something sweeter than the odor of Araby brushed my face, and, following the wind that had blown it through the poplars, I went up to the white paling and found there a trellis of honeysuckle, and beyond it Uncle Dick's garden. Thereafter I daily passed close by the fence that I might have the privilege of looking over it. It would be hard to define the charm of that garden. It did not consist in order or system, for there was no trace of either, except perhaps in that prim row of poplars, growing about the whole domain and shutting it away from all idle and curious eyes. For the rest, I think the real charm must have been in its unexpectedness. At every turn and in every nook you stumbled on some miracle of which you had never dreamed. Or perhaps the charm was simply that the whole garden was an expression of Uncle Dick's personality. In one corner a little green dory, filled with earth, overflowed in a wave of gay annuals. In the center of the garden an old birch-bark canoe seemed sailing through a sea of blossoms, with a many-colored freight of geraniums. Paths twisted and turned among flowering shrubs, and clumps of old-fashioned perennials were mingled with the latest fads of floral catalogues. The mid-garden was a pool of sunshine, with finely sifted winds purring over it. But under the poplars there were shadows and growing things that loved the shadows, crowding about the old stone benches at each side. Somehow my daily glimpse of Uncle Dick's garden soon became to symbolize for me a meaning easier to translate into life and soul than into words. It was a power for good within me, making its influence felt in many ways. Finally, I caught Uncle Dick in his garden. On my way home one evening, I found him on his knees among the rose bushes, and as soon as he saw me, he sprang up and came forward with outstretched hand. He was a tall man, about 50, with grizzled hair, but not a thread of silver yet showed itself in the ripples of his long brown beard. Later I discovered that his splendid beard was Uncle Dick's only vanity. So fine and silky was it that it did not hide the candid, sensitive curves of his mouth, around which a mellow smile, tinged with kindly, quizzical humor, always lingered. His face was tanned even more deeply than is usual among farmers, for he had an inveterate habit of going about hatless in the most merciless sunshine, but the line of forehead under his hair was white as milk, and his eyes were darkly blue and as tender as a woman's. "How do you do, master?" he said heartily. The Bayside pedagogue was invariably addressed as master, by young and old. "I am glad to see you. Here I am trying to save my rose bushes. There are green bugs on them, master, green bugs, and they're worrying the life out of me." I smiled, for Uncle Dick looked very unlike a worrying man, even over such a serious accident as green bugs. "Your roses don't seem to mind, Mr. Oliver," I said. "They are the finest I have ever seen." The compliment to his roses, well deserved as it was, did not at first engage his attention. He pretended to frown at me. "Don't get into a bad habit of mistering me, master. You'd better begin by calling me Uncle Dick from the start, and then you won't have the trouble of changing, because it would come to that. It always does. But come in, come in. There's a gate round here. I want to get acquainted with you. I have a taste for schoolmasters. I didn't possess it when I was a boy." A glint of fun appeared in his blue eyes. "It's an acquired taste." I accepted his invitation and went, not only into his garden, but, as was proved later, into his confidence and affection. He linked his arm with mine and piloted me about to show me his pets. "I potter about this garden considerable," he said. "It pleases the woman folks to have lots of posies." I laughed, for Uncle Dick was a bachelor and considered to be a hopeless one. "Don't laugh, master," he said, pressing my arm. "I have no woman folk of my own about me now, 'tis true. But all the girls in the district come to Uncle Dick when they want flowers for their little diversions. Besides, perhaps, sometimes—" Uncle Dick broke off and stood in a brown study, looking at an old stump aflame with nasturtiums for fully 3 minutes. Later on, I was to learn the significance of that pause and reverie. I spent the whole evening with Uncle Dick. After we had explored the garden, he took me into his house and into his den. The house was a small white one and wonderfully neat inside, considering the fact that Uncle Dick was his own housekeeper. His den was a comfortable place, its one window so shadowed by a huge poplar that the room had a grotto-like effect of emerald gloom. I came to know it well, for at Uncle Dick's invitation I did my studying there and browsed at will among his classics. We soon became close friends. Uncle Dick had always chummed with the masters, as he said, but our friendship went deeper. For my own part, I preferred his company to that of any young man I knew. There was a perennial spring of youth in Uncle Dick's soul, that yet had all the fascinating flavor of ripe experience. He was clever, kindly, humorous, and, withal, so crystal clear of mind and heart that an atmosphere partaking of childhood hung around him. I knew Uncle Dick's outward history as the Bayside people knew it. It was not a very eventful one. He had lost his father in boyhood. Before that, there had been some idea of Dick's going to college. After his father's death, he seemed quietly to have put all such hopes away and settled down to look after the farm and take care of his invalid stepmother. This woman, as I learned from others, but never from Uncle Dick, had been a peevish, fretful, exacting creature, and for nearly 30 years Uncle Dick had been a very slave to her whims and caprices. Nobody knows what he had to put up with, for he never complained. Mrs. Lindsay, my landlady, told me. She was out of her mind once, and she was liable to go out of it again, if she was crossed in anything. He was that good and patient with her. She was dreadful fond of him too, for all she did almost worry his life out. No doubt she was the reason he never married. He couldn't leave her, and he knew no woman would go in there. Uncle Dick never courted anyone, unless it was Rose Lawrence. She was a cousin of my man's. I've heard he had a kindness for her. It was years ago, before I came to Bayside. But anyway, nothing came of it. Her father's health failed, and he had to go out to California. Rose had to go with him, her mother being dead, and that was the end of Uncle Dick's love affair. But that was not the end of it, as I discovered when Uncle Dick gave me his confidence. One evening I went over, and, piloted by the sound of shrieks and laughter, found Uncle Dick careering about the garden, pursued by half a dozen schoolgirls who were pelting him with overblown roses. At sight of the master, my pupils instantly became prim and demure, and, gathering up the flowery spoil, they beat a hasty retreat down the lane. "Those little girls are very sweet," said Uncle Dick abruptly. "Little blossoms of life. Have you ever wondered, master, why I haven't some of my own blooming about the old place, instead of looking over the fence of other men's gardens, coveting their human roses?" "Yes, I have," I answered frankly. "It has been a puzzle to me why you, Uncle Dick, who seem to me fitted above all men I have ever known, for love and husbandhood and fatherhood, should have elected to live your life alone." "It has not been a matter of choice," said Uncle Dick gently. "We can't always order our lives as we would, master. I loved a woman once, and she loved me, and we love each other still. Do you think I could bear life else? I've an interest in it that the Bayside folk know nothing of. It has kept youth in my heart and joy in my soul through long, lonely years. And it's not ended yet, master. It's not ended yet. Some day I hope to bring a wife here to my old house, my wife, my rose of joy." He was silent for a space, gazing at the stars. I too kept silence, fearing to intrude into the holy places of his thought, although I was tingling with interest in this unsuspected outflowering of romance in Uncle Dick's life. After a time he said gently, "Shall I tell you about it, master? I mean, do you care to know?" "Yes," I answered. "I do care to know, and I shall respect your confidence, Uncle Dick. I know that. I couldn't tell you otherwise, he said. I don't want the Bayside folk to know. It would be a kind of desecration. They would laugh and joke me about it, as they tease other people, and I couldn't bear that. Nobody in Bayside knows or suspects, unless it's old Joe Hammond at the post office. And he's kept my secret, or what he knows of it, well. But somehow, I feel that I'd like to tell you, Master. 25 years ago, I loved Rose Lawrence. The Lawrences lived where you are boarding now. There was just the father, a sickly man, and Rose. My Rose of Joy, as I called her, for I knew my Emerson pretty well even then. She was sweet and fair, like a white rose with just a hint of pink in its cup. We loved each other, but we couldn't marry then. My mother was an invalid. And one time, before I had learned to care for Rose, she, the mother, had asked me to promise her that I'd never marry as long as she lived. She didn't think then that she would live long, but she lived for 20 years, Master, and she held me by the promise all the time. Yes, it was hard. For I had given an indignant exclamation. But you see, Master, I had promised, and I had to keep my word. Rose said I was right in doing it. She said she was willing to wait for me, but she didn't know, poor girl, how long the wait was to be. Then her father's health failed completely, and the doctor ordered him to another climate. They went to California. That was a hard parting, Master, but we promised each other that we would be true. And we have been. I've never seen my Rose of Joy since then, but I've had a letter from her every week. When the mother died 5 years ago, I wanted to move to California and marry Rose, but she wrote that her father was so poorly she couldn't marry me yet. She has to wait on him every minute, and he's restless. And they move here and there, a hard life for my poor girl. So I had to take a new lease of patience, Master. One learns how to wait in 20 years. But I shall have her some day, God willing. Our love will be crowned yet. So I wait, Master, and try to keep my life and soul clean and wholesome and young for her. That's my story, Master, and we'll not say anything more about it just now. For I dare say you don't exactly know what to say. But at times I talk of her to you, and that will be a rare pleasure to me. I think that was why I wanted you to know about her. He did talk often to me of her, and I soon came to realize what this faraway woman meant in his life. She was for him the center of everything. His love was strong, pure, and idyllic, the ideal love of which the loftiest poets sing. It glorified his whole inner life with a strange, unfailing radiance. I found that everything he did was done with an eye single to what she would think of it when she came. Especially did he put his love into his garden. Every flower in it stands for a thought of her, Master, he said. It is a great joy to think that she will walk in this garden with me some day. It will be complete then. My Rose of Joy will be here to crown it. That summer and winter passed away, and when spring came again, lettering her footsteps with violets in the meadows and waking all the sleeping loveliness of Homestead Gardens, Uncle Dick's long-deferred happiness came with her. One evening, when I was in our den, mid-deep in study of old things that seemed musty and unattractive enough in contrast with the vivid, new-born out-of-doors, Uncle Dick came home from the post office with an open letter in his hand. His big voice trembled as he said, "Master, she's coming home. Her father is dead, and she has nobody in the world now but me. In a month she will be here. Don't talk to me of it yet. I want to taste the joy of it in silence for a while." He hastened away to his garden and walked there until darkness fell, with his face uplifted to the sky, and the love rapture of countless generations shining in his eyes. Later on, we sat on one of the old stone benches, and Uncle Dick tried to talk practically. Bayside people soon found out that Rose Lawrence was coming home to marry Uncle Dick. Uncle Dick was much teased and suffered under it. It seemed, as he had said, desecration, but the real goodwill and kindly feeling in the banter redeemed it. He went to the station to meet Rose Lawrence the day she came. When I went home from school, Mrs. Lindsay told me she was in the parlor and took me in to be introduced. I was bitterly disappointed. Somehow I had expected to meet, not indeed a young girl, palpitating with youthful bloom, but a woman of ripe maturity, dowered with the beauty of harmonious middle age, the feminine counterpart of Uncle Dick. Instead, I found in Rose Lawrence a small, faded woman of 45, gowned in shabby black. She had evidently been very pretty once, but bloom and grace were gone. Her face had a sweet and gentle expression, but was tired and worn, and her fair hair was plentiful, streaked with grey. Alas, I thought compassionately for Uncle Dick's dreams. What a shock the change to her must have given him. Could this be the woman on whom he had lavished such a life wealth of love and reverence? I tried to talk to her, but I found her shy and timid. She seemed to me uninteresting and commonplace. And this was Uncle Dick's rose of joy. I was so sorry for Uncle Dick that I shrank from meeting him. Nevertheless, I went over after tea, fearing that he might misunderstand, nay, rather understand, my absence. He was in the garden, and he came down the path where the buds were just showing. There was a smile in his face, and the glory in his eyes was quite undimmed. "Master, she's come, and she's not a bit changed. I feared she would be, but she is just the same. My sweet little rose of joy." I looked at Uncle Dick in some amazement. He was thoroughly sincere. There was no doubt of that, and I felt a great throb of relief. He had found no disillusioning change. I saw Rose Lawrence merely with the cold eyes of the stranger. He saw her through the transfiguring medium of a love that made her truly his rose of joy. And all was well. They were married the next morning and walked together over the clover meadow to their home. In the evening I went over, as I had promised Uncle Dick to do. They were in the garden with a great saffron sky over them, and the glory of sunset behind the poplars. I paused unseen at the gate. Uncle Dick was big and splendid in his fine new wedding suit, and his faded little bride was hanging on his arm. Her face was upturned to him. It was a glorified face, so transformed by the tender radiance of love shining through it, that I saw her then as Uncle Dick must always see her, and no longer found it hard to understand how she could be his rose of joy. Happiness clothed them as a garment. They were crowned, king and queen, in the bridal realm of the springtime. The Schoolmaster's Letters. At sunset, the schoolmaster went up to his room to write a letter to her. He always wrote to her at the same time, when the red wave of the sunset, flaming over the sea, surged in at the little curtainless window and flowed over the pages he wrote on. The light was rose-red and imperial and spiritual, like his love for her, and seemed almost to dye the words of the letters in its own splendid hues. The letters to her which she never was to see, whose words her eyes never were to read, and whose love and golden fancy and rainbow dreams never were to be so much as known by her. And it was because she never was to see them that he dared to write them, straight out of his full heart, taking the exquisite pleasure of telling her what he never could permit himself to tell her face to face. Every evening he wrote thus to her, and the hours so spent glorified the entire day. The rest of the hours, all the other hours of the commonplace day, he was merely a poor schoolmaster with a long struggle before him, one who might not lift his eyes to gaze on a star. But at this hour he was her equal, meeting her soul to soul, telling out as a man might all his great love for her, and wearing the jewel of it on his brow. What wonder indeed that the precious hour which made him a king, crowned with a mighty and unselfish passion, was above all things sacred to him, and doubly sacred when, as tonight, it followed upon an hour spent with her. Its mingled delight and pain were almost more than he could bear. He went through the kitchen and the hall and up the narrow staircase with a glory in his eyes that thus were held from seeing his sordid surroundings. The link houseman, sprawled out on the platform before the kitchen door, saw him pass with that rapt face, and chuckled. Link was ill enough to look at any time, with his sharp, freckled features and foxy eyes. When he chuckled, his face was that of an unholy imp. But the schoolmaster took no heed of him, neither did he heed the girl whom he met in the hall. Her handsome, sullen face flushed crimson under the sting of his utter disregard, and her black eyes followed him up the stairs with a look that was not good to see. "Sis," whispered Link piercingly, "come out here. I've got a joke to tell you. Something about the master and his girl. You ain't to let on to him, you know, though. I found it out last night when he was off to the shore. That old key of Uncle Jim's was just the thing. He's a softy, and no mistake." Upstairs, in his little room, the schoolmaster was writing his letter. The room was as bare and graceless as all the other rooms of the farmhouse, where he had boarded during his term of teaching. But it looked out onto the sea, and was hung with such priceless tapestry of his Irish dreams and visions, that it was to him an apartment in a royal palace. From it he gazed afar on bays that were like great cups of sapphire, brimming over with ruby wine for gods to drain, on headlands that were like amethysts, on wide sweeps of sea that were blue and far and mysterious. And ever the moan and call of the ocean's heart came up to his heart, as of one great, hopeless love and longing, crying out to another love and longing, as great and hopeless And here, in the rose radiance of the sunset, with the sea music in the dim air, he wrote his letter to her. My lady, how beautiful it is to think that there is nothing to prevent my loving you. There is much, everything, to prevent me from telling you that I love you. But nothing has any right to come between my heart and its own. It is permitted to love you forever and ever, and serve and reverence you in the secret and silence. For so much, dear, I thank life, even though the price of the permission must always be the secret and the silence. I have just come from you, my lady. Your voice is still in my ears. Your eyes are still looking into mine, gravely yet half smilingly, sweetly yet half provokingly. Oh, how dear and human and girlish and queenly you are! Half saint and half very womanly woman. And how I love you with all there is of me to love, heart and soul and brain, every fibre of body and spirit thrilling to the wonder and marvel and miracle of it. You do not know it, my sweet, and you must never know it. You would not even wish to know it, for I am nothing to you but one of many friends, coming into your life briefly and passing out of it, of no more account to you than a sunshiny hour, a bird's song, a bursting bud in your garden. But the hour and the bird and the flower gave you a little delight in their turn, and when you remember them once before forgetting, that was their reward and blessing. That is all I ask, dear lady, and I ask that only in my own heart. I am content to love you and be forgotten. It is sweeter to love you and be forgotten than it would be to love any other woman and live in her lifelong remembrance. So humble as love made me, sweet, so great is my sense of my own unworthiness. Yet love must find expression in some fashion, dear, else it is only pain, and hence these letters to you which you will never read. I put all my heart into them. They are the best and the highest of me, the buds of a love that can never bloom openly in the sunshine of your life. I weave a chaplet of them, dear, and crown you with it. They will never fade, for such love is eternal. It is a whole summer since I first met you. I had been waiting for you all my life before and did not know it. But I knew it when you came and brought with you a sense of completion and fulfillment. This has been the precious year of my life, the turning point to which all things past tended, and all things future must look back. Oh, my dear, I thank you for this year. It has been your royal gift to me, and I shall be rich and great forever because of it. Nothing can ever take it from me, nothing can mar it. It were well to have lived a lifetime of loneliness for such a boon. The price would not be too high. I would not give my one perfect summer for a generation of other men's happiness. There are those in the world who would laugh at me, who would pity me, Una. They would say that the love I have poured out in secret at your feet has been wasted, that I am a poor, weak fool to squander all my treasure of affection on a woman who does not care for me, and who is as far above me as that great white star that is shining over the sea. Oh, my dear, they do not know, they cannot understand. The love I have given you has not left me poorer. It has enriched my life unspeakably. It has opened my eyes and given me the gift of clear vision for those things that matter. It has been a lamp held before my stumbling feet, whereby I have avoided snares and pitfalls of baser passions and unworthy dreams. For all this I thank you, dear, and for all this surely the utmost that I can give of love and reverence and service is not too much. I could not have helped loving you, but if I could have helped it, knowing with just what measure of pain and joy it would brim my cup, I would have chosen to love you, Una. There are those who strive to forget a hopeless love. To me, the greatest misfortune that life could bring would be that I should forget you. I want to remember you always, and love you, and long for you. That would be unspeakably better than any happiness that could come to me through forgetting. Dear lady, good night. The sun has set. There is now but one fiery dimple on the horizon, as if a golden finger had dented it. Now it is gone. The mists are coming up over the sea. A kiss on each of your white hands, dear. Tonight I am too humble to lift my thoughts to your lips. The schoolmaster folded up his letter and held it against his cheek for a little space while he gazed out on the silver-shining sea with his dark eyes full of dreams. Then he took from his shabby trunk a little inlaid box and unlocked it with a twisted silver key. It was full of letters, his letters to Una. The first had been written months ago, in the early promise of a northern spring. They linked together the golden weeks of the summer. Now, in the purple autumn, the box was full, and the schoolmaster's term was nearly ended. He took out the letters reverently and looked over them, now and then murmuring below his breath some passages scattered through the written pages. He had laid bare his heart in those letters, writing out what he never could have told her, even if his love had been known and returned. For dead and gone generations of stern and repressed forefathers laid their unyielding fingers of reserve on his lips, and the shyness of dreamy, book-bred youth stamped the language of eye and tone. I will love you forever and ever, and even though you know it not, surely such love will hover around you all your life, like an invisible benediction, not understood but dimly felt, guarding you from ill, and keeping far from you all things and thoughts of harm and evil. Sometimes I let myself dream, and in those dreams you love me, and we go out to meet life together. I have dreamed that you kissed me, dreamed it so reverently that the dream did your womanhood no wrong. I have dreamed that you put your hands in mine and said, I love you. Oh, the rapture of it. We may give all we will if we do not ask for a return. There should be no barter in love. If, by reason of the greatness of my love for you, I were to ask your love in return, I should be a base creature. It is only because I am content to love and serve for the sake of loving and serving that I have the right to love you. I have a memory of a blush of yours, a rose of the years that will bloom forever in my garden of remembrance. Tonight you blushed when I came upon you suddenly among the flowers. You were startled. Perhaps I had broken too rudely on some girlish musing. And straightway your round, pale curve of cheek and your white arch of brow were made rosy, as with the dawn of beautiful sunrise. I shall see you forever, as you looked at that time. In my mad moments I shall dream, knowing all the while that it is only a dream, that you blushed with delight at my coming. I shall be able to picture forevermore how you would look at one you loved. Tonight the moon was low in the west. It hung over the sea like a shallop of ruddy gold, moored to a star in the harbor of the night. I lingered long and watched it, for I knew that you, too, were watching it from your window that looks on the sea. You told me once that you always watched the moon set. It has been a bond between us ever since. This morning I rose at dawn and walked to the shore to think of you, because it seemed the most fitting time. It was before sunrise, and the world was virgin. All the east was a shimmer of silver, and the morning star floated in it like a dissolving pearl. The sea was a great miracle. I walked up and down by it and said your name over and over again. The hour was sacred to you. It was as pure and unspoiled as your own soul. Una, who will bring into your life the sunrise splendor and color of love. Do you know how beautiful you are, Una? Let me tell you, dear. You are tall. You are tall, yet you have to lift your eyes a little to meet mine. Such dear eyes, Una. They are dark blue, and when you smile they are like wet violets in sunshine. But when you are pensive, they are more lovely still. The spirit and enchantment of the sea at twilight passes into them then. Your hair has the gloss and brownness of ripe nuts, and your face is always pale. Your lips have a trick of falling apart in a half-smile when you listen. They told me before I knew you that you were pretty. Pretty. The word is cheap and tawdry. You are beautiful with the beauty of a pearl or a star or a white flower. Do you remember our first meeting? It was one evening last spring. You were in your garden. The snow had not all gone, but your hands were full of pale early flowers. You wore a white shawl over your shoulders and head. Your face was turned upward a little, listening to a robin's call in the leafless trees above you. I thought God had never made anything so lovely and love-deserving. I loved you from that moment, Una. This is your birthday. The world has been glad of you for 20 years. It is fitting that there have been birdsongs and sunshine and blossom today. A great light and fragrance over land and sea. This morning I went far afield to a long, lonely valley lying to the west, girt round about the dim old pines, where feet of men seldom tread. And there I searched until I found some rare flowers meet to offer you. I sent them to you with a little book, an old book, a new book, savoring of the shop and marketplace, however beautiful it might be, would not do for you. So I sent a book that was my mother's. She read it and loved it. The faded rose leaves she placed in it are there still. At first, dear, I almost feared to send it. Would you miss its meaning? Would you laugh a little at the shabby volume with its pencil marks and its rose leaves? But I knew you would not. I knew you would understand. Today I saw you with the child of your sister in your arms. I felt as the old painters must have felt when they painted their Madonnas. You bent over his shining golden head, and on your face was the mother passion and tenderness that is God's finishing touch to the beauty of womanhood. The next moment you were laughing with him, two children playing together. But I had looked upon you in that brief space. Oh, the pain and joy of it! It is so sweet, dear, to serve you a little, though it be only in opening a door for you to pass through, or handing you a book or a sheet of music. Love wishes to do so much for the beloved. I can do so little for you, but that little is sweet. This evening I read to you the poem which you had asked me to read. You sat before me with your brown head leaning on your hands and your eyes cast down. I stole dear glances at you between the lines. When I finished, I put a red rose from your garden between the pages and crushed the book close on it. That poem will always be dear to me, stained with the lifeblood of a rose like our. I do not know which is the sweeter, your laughter or your sadness. When you laugh, you make me glad, but when you are sad, I want to share in your sadness and soothe it. I think I am nearer to you in your sorrowful moods. Today I met you by accident, at the turn of the lane. Nothing told me that you were coming, not even the wind that should have known. I was sad, and then all at once I saw you, and wondered how I could have been sad. You walked past me with a smile, as if you had tossed me a rose. I stood and watched you out of sight. That meeting was the purple gift the day gave me. Today I tried to write a poem to you, Una, but I could not find words fine enough, as a lover could find no raiment dainty enough for his bride. The old words other men have used in singing to their loves seemed too worn and common for you. I wanted only new words, crystal clear, or colored only by the iris of the light, not words that have been steeped and stained with all the hues of other men's thoughts. So I burned the verses that were so unworthy of you. Una, some day you will love. You will watch for him, you will blush at his coming, be sad at his going. Oh, I cannot think of it. Today I saw you when you did not see me. I was walking on the shore, and as I came round a rock, you were sitting on the other side. I drew back a little and looked at you. Your hands were clasped over your knees. Your hat had fallen back, and the sea wind was ruffling your hair. Your face was lifted to the sky, your lips were parted, your eyes were full of light. You seemed to be listening to something that made you happy. I crept gently away, that I might not mar your dream. Of what were you thinking, Una? I must leave you soon. Sometimes I think I cannot bear it. Oh, Una, how selfish it is of me to wish that you might love me. Yet I do wish it, although I have nothing to offer you but a great love and all my willing work of hand and brain. If you loved me, I fear I should be weak enough to do you the wrong of wooing you. I want you so much, dear. The schoolmaster added the last letter to the others and locked the box. When he unlocked it again 2 days later, the letters were gone. He gazed at the empty box with dilated eyes. At first he could not realize what had happened. The letters could not be gone. He must have made a mistake, have put them in some other place. With trembling fingers he ransacked his trunk. There was no trace of the letters. With a groan he dropped his face in his hands and tried to think. His letters were gone. Those precious letters, held almost too sacred for his own eyes to read after they were written, had been stolen from him. The inmost secrets of his soul had been betrayed. Who had done this hideous thing? He rose and went downstairs. In the farmyard he found Link tormenting his dog. Link was happy only when he was tormenting something. He never had been afraid of anything in his life before. But now absolute terror took possession of him at sight of the schoolmaster's face. Physical strength and force had no power to frighten the sullen lad. But all the irresistible might of a fine soul, roused to frenzy, looked out in the young man's blazing eyes, dilated nostrils, and tense white mouth. It cowed the boy, because it was something he could not understand. He only realized that he was in the presence of a force that was not to be trifled with. "Link, where are my letters?" said the schoolmaster. "I didn't take 'em, master," cried Link, crumpling up visibly in his sheer terror. "I didn't. I never touch 'em. It was Sis. I told her not to. I told her you'd be awful mad, but she wouldn't tend to me. It was Sis took 'em. Ask her if you don't believe me." The schoolmaster believed him. Nothing was too horrible to believe just then. "What has she done with them?" he said hoarsely. She sent them to Una Clifford," whimpered Link. "I told her not to. She's mad at you, 'cause you went to see Una and wouldn't go with her. She thought Una would be mad at you for writing 'em, 'cause the Cliffords are so proud, and think themselves above everybody else, so she sent 'em. I told her not to." The schoolmaster said not another word, turned his back on the whining boy, and went to his room. He felt sick with the shame. The indecency of the whole thing revolted him. It was as if his naked heart had been torn from his breast and held upon to the jeers of a vulgar world by the merciless hand of a scorned and jealous woman. He felt stunned as if by a physical blow. After a time, his fierce anger and shame died into a calm desperation. The deed was done beyond recall. It only remained for him to go to Una, tell her the truth, and implore her pardon. Then he must go, from her sight and presence forever. It was dusk when he went to her home. They told him that she was in the garden, and he found her there, standing at the curve of the box walk, among the last late-blooming flowers of the summer. Have you thought from his letters that she was a wonderful woman of marvelous beauty? Not so. She was a sweet and slender slip of girlhood, with girlhood's own charm and freshness. There were thousands like her in the world, thank God for it, but only one like her in one man's eyes. He stood before her, mute with shame, his boyish face white and haggard. She had blushed crimson all over her dainty paleness at sight of him, and laid her hand quickly on the breast of her white gown. Her eyes were downcast, and her breath came shortly. He thought her silence the silence of anger and scorn. He wished that he might fling himself in the dust at her feet. "Una, Miss Clifford, forgive me," he stammered miserably. I did not send them. I never meant that you should see them. A shameful trick has been played upon me. Forgive me." "For what am I to forgive you?" she asked gravely. She did not look up, but her lips parted in the little half-smile he loved. The blush was still on her face. "For my presumption," he whispered. "I could not help loving you, Una. If you have read the letters, you know all the rest." "I have read the letters, every word," she answered, pressing her hand a little more closely to her breast. "Perhaps I should not have done so, for I soon discovered that they were not meant for me to read. I thought at first you had sent them, although the writing of the address on the packet did not look like yours. But even when I knew you did not, I could not help reading them all. I do not know who sent them, but I am very grateful to the sender." "Grateful?" he said wonderingly. "Yes, I have something to forgive you, but not your presumption. It is your blindness, I think, and your cruel resolution to go away and never tell me of your love for me. If it had not been for the sending of these letters, I might never have known. How can I forgive you for that?" "Una," he said. He had been very blind, but he was beginning to see. He took a step nearer and took her hands. She threw up her head and gazed, blushingly, steadfastly, into his eyes. From the folds of her gown she drew forth the little packet of letters and kissed it. "Your dear letters," she said bravely. "They have given me the right to speak out. I will speak out. I love you, dear. I will be content to wait through the long years until you can claim me. I have been so happy since your letters came." He put his arms around her and drew her close to his. Their lips met.